Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
Love what you do until you can do what you love. This is a famous quote that inspires people to seek out their dream job. I heard that quote at school before I graduated and entered the working world. What's that, you ask? Was I successful in achieving my dream? Well, I came this close. Let me tell you about it. My name is Max and I'm 19 years old. Poverty and I are intimate friends and constant companions. I live in one of the poorest neighborhoods in my city. Most of the local citizens work at the seaport. The rest of us, we make a living by scavenging through and collecting rubbish. But I wasn't just an ordinary rubbish collector. No, sir, I was a specialist in that field, like my dad before me. Dad taught my brothers and me how to do it expertly. This is how it worked. Factories liked to use recycled materials to reduce the cost of buying new materials, so we would go to the city rubbish pile and separate out materials into different piles, such as plastics, glass bottles, milk cartons, tin cans, and so on. Then we would sell those materials to factories for reuse in making their products. This recycling process saved the factories a ton of money, but unfortunately, that didn't translate into a ton of money for us rubbish collectors. I had a dream one day of opening my own factory and just sitting back and watching the money flow in. When I told Dad that, he told me that good fortune only happens for a select few people. After hearing those words, I went to bed and dreamed about my future factory. Little did I suspect that my dream might actually come true someday. One day after working late collecting rubbish, while on the way home, I suddenly heard voices coming from a large rubbish pile in front of my home. It seemed that people were using that pile as a place of business to sell drugs and booze. An argument was brewing between two groups. Each group were wielding sticks and knives as makeshift weapons. One guy in Group A had a gun and shot someone in Group B, so someone in Group B stabbed gun guy in Group A. After that, a full-on fight ensued, with everyone in both groups joining in the fray. Within minutes, I heard approaching police sirens, which caused the fight to break up and both groups to run away, leaving the bleeding gun guy lying on the sidewalk. I tried to help him by staunching his bleeding. As I was doing so, I noticed a lottery ticket beside him with a letter saying that it was the winning ticket for $1 million payout. I froze. I looked around. No one was watching, so I acted, somewhat ignobly. Then I left quickly. If the police were to arrive and find me with the bleeding man, they might think that I had done it. I rushed home and fell into an easy chair, taking a deep breath of relief. While I was telling Dad about what had happened, there was a knock on the door. It was the Group A and B gangs. The spokesperson for the two groups held a knife in my direction and said, "Hand over the lottery ticket or die where you stand." Needless to say, I handed it over post-haste. But then he said, "I'm sorry, you've seen too much. You have to die." I pleaded, "But I didn't see anything, I swear." Suddenly, there was a flash from a camera, and the whole group of thugs began laughing. "You've been pranked," Dad said, as he stepped out from the crowd. My brothers were behind him laughing too. "You've been pranked," Dad said, as he stepped out from the crowd. My brothers were behind him laughing too. While relieved that my imminent death had been postponed, I was deeply saddened that I had lost my $1 million chance to get my dream factory. What rubbish.
Could you live with yourself if you found out your whole life turned out to be a lie? That you are not who you thought you were? My story may strike you as a silly Hollywood drama, but every word of it is true, I swear. My name is Tasha, and I am 19 years old. I am in the 12th grade, and I live with my family in a posh mansion. I was an only child, so my parents spoiled me by giving me everything I could ask for. Love, protection, the finest education, material things. My father always worried for my safety. He was so protective that it annoyed me, though I loved him for it. I lived the life that every teenager could only dream about. I had a car, money, and the ability to travel the world if I so desired. The only strain on my existence, as it were, was when I discovered a secret about my life, which is what this story is about. It was the first day of a new school year. The school day was over, and I was walking home with my friends when I noticed a woman standing across the street. She was watching me closely, as if she knew me. Perhaps I resembled one of her friends or relatives. This situation repeated itself on many occasions. Her stalking of me made me feel uneasy, even though she didn't look threatening in the least. So one day, I decided to exit out of the back side of the school instead of the front side. Then I peeked around the corner of the school building to observe her. She was scanning the exiting students carefully, one by one. She looked annoyed that she couldn't find me. Then I sneaked around behind her and tapped her on the shoulder. When she turned around and saw me, her face lit up with joy. I told her that I had seen her watching me every day and asked her why she was doing so. It seemed that she wanted to burst into a lengthy conversation, but instead she stopped herself and calmly handed me a letter. Then she began crying and left me quickly. I resisted opening the letter until I got home, sat down, and got comfortable. Then I proceeded to open the letter. It contained a calendar date and a simple note. Research this date and you will know everything. I browsed the internet for events that happened on that date. There were many hits. One hit was a news article about a woman who had killed her husband. Her husband had been constantly abusing her and her baby girl, so the woman had sold her daughter to a rich man to protect her life. When her husband discovered what she had done, he began beating her severely, and in self-defense, she killed him. I was shocked to read that the rich man she had sold the baby to was none other than my dad. I felt like I was in an Asian Indian movie. I'm in a quandary as to what I should do. Do you have any suggestions? Any advice? Please.
Everyone dreams of winning millions of dollars with minimal effort. I had an opportunity to do so. Would you turn down such an opportunity? Yeah, I wouldn't either. My name is Mender, and I'm 21 years old. I live with my mother and my little brother. Dad left us 10 years ago. Mom tried to contact him, but failed, so she was forced to raise us alone. She turned down many marriage proposals after that. From an early age, I have dreamed of doing something good to pay Mom back for all of her efforts in raising us, so I decided to use my intellectual talent to do so. You see, I'm highly intelligent. I can memorize a vast amount of information. I always earned excellent grades in school. The only problem was that I knew I could never work hard to get rich in my own country because it was so poor. The only chance I had to get rich was to have a fantastic stroke of luck, like finding a gold mine or a magical money tree. My chance came along one day when a game show called Who Will Win Millions offered millions of dollars to the winner. In this show, you have to answer a series of questions ranging from easy to hard. The catch was that the last question was always extremely difficult to answer. The show announced that the next winner would win $3 million. That kind of jackpot was exactly what I needed to achieve my dream of helping Mom, so I decided to apply to get on the show. They called me 2 days later to tell me that I had been selected to be one of the show's contestants. When I arrived at the show's studio, the staff greeted me and got me ready. A coin toss decided who would go first. I got lucky again and won the toss. As expected, the questions started out easy and gradually became increasingly difficult. I was able to answer the next to last question. So far, so good. The show was live, and I was confident that my family was watching me, praying that I would win. The final question was next. Suddenly, the game show host called for a commercial break because the show's director wanted to talk to me. The director offered me $50,000 to be sure to answer the last question wrong. I was shocked. They cheated and played stupid games with people's dreams. I refused to play their game of skullduggery. The show resumed, and I was lucky and was able to answer the last question correctly. It was an esoteric knowledge question, but I had read about it before, so I got lucky again. The host was visibly upset. Nevertheless, he asked if I wanted to say anything to the audience. I said I did, and then I proceeded to tell the audience that, on the last break, the show's director bribed me to miss the last question on purpose. At that point, the show's producer cut the live feed, and the director had security guards escort me off the studio stage into the back room where, well, I can't remember what happened there. Waking up later in a hospital bed, I spent weeks recovering from mysterious bruises all over my body. I received a small reward from the authorities for exposing a scam. It wasn't $3 million, but I was satisfied anyway. The show was canceled, and the staff were arrested and served some prison time. I gave my reward to Mom. What luck.
Hi, my name is Sandra, and I'm 17 years old. People used to call me Evil Eyes, not because I had a strange face, but because of my eyes. I had a genetic mutation, so my eyes were different colors. One was light gray and the other was dark brown. This effect made me look like an evil witch. a point of morbid curiosity. Whenever I would enter a public area, people would follow me with their eyes. Whenever children would see me, they would begin crying in fear. I had very few friends because people mocked whoever hung around with a freak like me. Society's negative reaction to my condition forced me to wear a light gray colored contact lens over my dark brown eyes so that both eyes appeared light gray in color. One day, a poetry reading contest was held in my area. I should have considered this to be an excellent opportunity for me because I used to be a very good poetry reader. But I stopped due to the people making fun of my eyes. So when I learned about the contest, I wasn't as excited as I normally would have been. Nevertheless, my mom encouraged me to take part in the contest. As I considered my mom to be my best friend, I took her advice. The day of the contest arrived. It was being held in the National City Theater with a panel of judges. There were some of the highly regarded poets in the country. A huge audience had bought tickets to attend the event. The competition was fierce because there were many skilled poets in there, and they were very confident. As for myself, I was worried and nervous. I wore sunglasses to hide my mismatched eyes. This was part of my presentation, but no one knew that. I could hear some people whispering behind my back, wondering why the stupid girl was wearing sunglasses inside a building. I heard a good number of silly, stupid, hurtful whispered comments. In due course, my turn came, and I went up on stage and began my reading. The audience mumbled to each other as I read. The judges seemed to be pleased. The poem I was reading was about my genetic peculiarity. At a suitable point, I removed my sunglasses to reveal what my poem was about. My mismatched eye colors. I expected gasps of shock or laughter from the audience, but nothing happened. The audience continued listening quietly and respectfully. After I finished my reading, the audience applauded warmly. Mom was crying tears of joy and pride. I was pleasantly surprised by the audience response. I honestly had expected much worse. Well, I didn't win the contest. I wasn't the best poet by a long shot. But what I gained was much more. Pride and confidence in knowing that I had faced my fear and gained acceptance from everyone there. Now I have a new nickname, Wonder Eyes. Hi, my name is Selena. I'm 19 years old, and I'm just crazy about basketball. I follow all the sports news, the star players, and the league statistics. I know the names of all the famous players around the world. My friends were amused by this because their interests ran more towards makeup, fashion, singers, and movie stars. I thought those girl things were just outright vain, shallow, frivolous, and downright silly to tell the truth. The college's basketball team coach was forced to take leave due to a chronic illness, leaving the team without a coach. Due to my high school reputation and widely recognized basketball expertise, I was asked if I wanted to serve as the basketball team's temporary coach. I had always dreamed of someday becoming a coach for a famous basketball team, so I jumped at the opportunity. School leagues presented opportunities for players to show what they've got and maybe get scouted by a professional league team. It was also my chance to start as a college basketball coach. By studying the opposing team's previous games, I analyzed their strategies and learned their strengths and weaknesses. I was able to excel and drive my team to an undefeated streak of winnings. We won the college league championship. I was selected to train a team in a professional league with another famous coach. It was an incredible opportunity for me to up my game a notch. During this time, I met an opposing team's coach named Jacob, who was something of a genius when it came to winning basketball strategies. He shared the same dreams as mine. He bragged that his team was better than mine. Well, I couldn't ignore the gauntlet he threw at my feet, so I challenged him to a game. My team against his, in the upcoming season, and may the best team win. If my team won, he would acknowledge me as a superior coach, and vice versa. The season began, and both our teams began beating all our opponents. I used these victories to hone my coaching skills to the next level. Both our teams were undefeated until the day we were to face each other in a championship game. The game began, and both teams played hard. We stayed closely matched the entire game. In the final few seconds of play, one of their players got past our defense. He scored a buzzer beat. I was crushed and began to cry, but my team's fans in the stadium broke into a loud applause. They began chanting my name, acknowledging that I have given them a great competitive, entertaining game. Jacob came over to me. I figured he came to gloat, but instead, He got down on one knee and presented me with an engagement ring. I was in shock. The stadium cheered even louder. I may have lost the game that day, but for some reason, I felt like a winner.
My name is Jerry. I am the village dreamer who touched the poor suffering and pain. In my country, illness is a monster that eats its victim's soul without mercy. I decided to be the soul saver, or the savior of souls. Heroes in my country don't wear superhero costumes. Rather, they wear white lab coats with stethoscopes hanging around their necks. I knew how difficult it was to become a doctor, but I was up for the challenge, so I enrolled in a medical college. The studies were challenging, but my creed in life is this: an opportunity may only come around once. You must take it or leave it. After graduation, I was hired to work in a government hospital in my village. Unfortunately, I discovered early on that my knowledge level wasn't broad enough, so I traveled to England to expand my knowledge base. I wanted to take advantage of the experience of the professional doctors there, so I attended difficult surgeries and observed and studied them intently. My mind was like a sponge, absorbing vast amounts of empirical data. Even so, I still wasn't satisfied with my knowledge level, so I traveled to the USA. When I arrived in Chicago, I felt like a thirsty man who had an oasis in the desert. I encountered advanced technologies, modern, new medical equipment, leading-edge ways of treating heart disease, serious heart disease cases, and fantastic anecdotal stories from famous doctors about their most unusual cases. I dreamed of being a great doctor like them, and my opportunity came when a baby girl was diagnosed with a serious heart illness. She was not expected to live long, so I volunteered to perform some risky surgery on her. All the doctors around me thought I was crazy, but I knew that I could do it. After 5 hours of arduous concentration, focus, stress, and sweating under the operating room lamps, the surgery concluded successfully. I had proven myself to be a great doctor after all. Afterwards and subsequent surgeries, I became known as the guardian angel who saved souls. I gathered a huge following due to my successes. I was surprised when my surgery techniques later became required studies in my country. I became a role model for many aspiring medical students. I returned home to thank my country by building a heart hospital that treated people for free. Many people donated to my cause. My hospital saved many souls, but this is a never-ending mission. My country bestowed upon me the honorable title of the Prince of Hearts. Will you donate to my cause?
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 23 years old, and I teach art. I recently got married to the love of my life, Norman. I considered him my friend, my brother, my son, and my husband. We loved to prank each other, even after we got married. For instance, one time I turned off all the lights in the apartment, dressed up as a monster, and scared the living daylights out of him when he came back from the store. Another time, he damaged my car. I put mayonnaise on his toast. I did worry sometimes that our jokes might go too far. I mean, he did get really mad at me once. He stopped talking to me for 2 days, even though I apologized profusely many times. After that, our pranks sort of stopped. I figured our pranking days were over. About a month later, I returned home to find a letter on the floor. I opened it and read it. "If you don't pay us 100,000 by Friday, we will kill Norman." I smiled. Norman was pranking me again. When he returned home, I hugged him and showed him his prank letter. He read it carefully, and his brow furrowed. He appeared seriously frightened and swore that this was not part of any prank. He told me that we needed to leave town as soon as possible. I asked him why, and he told me that before he married me, he had stolen a gold statue from a motorcycle gang. I asked him why he couldn't just return it with an apology, and he told me that the statue was worth a lot of money and could make us really wealthy. That night, an armed masked burglar broke into our apartment and confronted us with a gun. He said to Norman, "Hello, Norman, long time no see. You need to choose between the statue or your wife. Choose now." Norman was hesitant. Then he steadfastly said, "I can't give up the statue. Take my wife." The masked man turned towards me. He pointed the gun at me in a threatening manner. I was frantic. I was staring at Norman in shock. Suddenly, the masked man ripped off his mask. It was Keanu, Norman's brother. Norman sat down, laughing so hard he could hardly stop to breathe. Between laughs, he said, "This is payback for the last prank of yours. I was so mad at him that day, but it's all right. He doesn't know what I have planned for him." Soccer is an obsession for people who like to bet, argue, and boast about whose team is best. My name is Jacqueline, and I'm 25 years old. I grew up in a family whose male members were crazy about soccer. They were fanatical fans of the Liverpool club team. We all knew the club had gone through some difficult seasons over the past few years, but it looked like they may have finally assembled a formidable team now. I, myself, wasn't interested in soccer, but Dad and my brothers were obsessed with it and would hit the ceiling whenever their team lost. I wished to live far away from all this, but at this point, it wasn't an option. After finishing high school, I went to an out-of-state college just to distance myself from all that hooting and hollering at home on game days. At college, I met someone. His name was Fred. We took the same classes and made an excellent team. Later on, he proposed, and I accepted. During college break, he visited so he could meet my family. It happened to be on a Liverpool soccer game day. That's when I learned that Fred was the same. In fact, he was even crazier than Dad and my brothers. It looked like he cared more about that team than anything else. It was the final match of the season. Everyone was excited about the game. I made a few bowls of popcorn for everyone to eat while watching the game. The two teams were about equally matched, and the score was tied. Suddenly, I heard angry shouts, so I went into the living room to see what had happened. The other team had scored a goal, and one of its players had fouled a Liverpool player. Then, they scored 2 more goals in quick succession. Fred lost it and began beating loudly on the coffee table. Then, he inexplicably lost consciousness and fell flat on his face. We took him to the hospital, where he spent 3 days in the intensive care. The doctor told us that he had had a heart attack, but he would be okay. After he recovered, he promised me that he wouldn't lose his temper over a soccer game again. Today, we are watching the final match between Liverpool and Tottenham. I have the ambulance phone number on speed dial just in case.